Good afternoon, Ricky Tang here. I'm just about to take a spin on Suzuki's GSX-8R, courtesy of Frasers of Gloucester. First impressions. I cannot believe how much low-end grunt this bike's got. That was ridiculous. I'm going to slow down to first gear. And I was not expecting this. I want one already. I was not expecting that from this bike. What was I expecting? Well, it's what, 779cc parallel twin, producing about 83 PS, 82.9 at about 8,800 RPM, if I remember rightly. I am a fan of torque. I do like an engine with a bit of torque. Having said that, earlier on today, I was riding Kawasaki's ZX-4RR, and that's also amazing and crazy in its own way. So I decided on this bike at rather short notice today. I knew I could ride a bike from Frasers, wasn't sure which one. Settled on the GSX-8R because Luke said he had a good time on it when he took it out recently, and I knew, you know, this would be a solid bike to ride and an enjoyable machine and all that. Modern 270-degree crank parallel twin of over 750cc. But what I was not expecting is how keen this engine is to rev. There is no waiting for power. I will be interested to see if it hangs on at the top revs or whether it kind of runs out of breath. If it doesn't run out of breath and kind of pulls strong, you know, towards the red line, this machine will be a real sleeper. Because, sorry if you're of a younger generation, a sleeper means a vehicle that goes faster than it looks. Its looks are understated. I do like I think it's Triton blue metallic colour, but the styling doesn't say "I'll rip your face off." But the engine is trying. It's clawing at me. Engine aside, I am rather surprised at the firmness of the seat and the seat height. I'll have to put the seat height on the screen for you, but it feels pretty sporty, bit GSX-R like in terms of the seat comfort and give. There isn't much. I don't know what that'll be like on a longer trip. Seriously, I know it's too soon to say, really, but I want one in the shed. That engine is just already putting a big smile on my face. Alright, let's calm down. Let's give it a different kind of challenge. 6th gear, 3,000 RPM. Fair bit of vibration, but seems to smooth out at about 4,000 RPM. We do have modes, so I will tell you that I am in the sportiest throttle response on the SDMS, Suzuki Drive Mode Selector. I'm on A. Traction control is on 2, middle setting. 1 is the least intervention. 3 is the most intervention, and I'm pretty sure wheelie control will be integrated into those traction control settings. Hey, you know what? I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. The bike does feel surprisingly firm. I know, GSX-8R, I shouldn't be too surprised. But based on the GSX-8S, I was expecting a slightly more cosseting ride quality. Nothing wrong with it at all, just firmer than I expected. And with these handlebars, I know they are kind of clip-ons essentially, but they are quite high. What on earth? Those butterflies, as soon as you open the throttle, they just go wah. I imagine in the drive mode, SDMS was if that was on C, which is essentially probably rain mode, you would say. It takes quite a long time to actually get any sort of response when you twist the throttle, relatively speaking. When you go from a closed to open throttle, it just takes a little while to kick in. That's funny, mode C is almost what I was expecting from the bike in mode A. I'm so sorry, Suzuki, for doing you a massive disservice. Oh, the one thing we're lacking is cruise control. That is a bit of a shame. But having said that, the throttle's really light, the clutch is light. Oh, the way this bike digs in. Yeah, that is quite the revelation. Okay, so I've had a bit of a throttle twisting exercise. Lots of fun. Let's slow it down a bit. Fans kicked off. It's not 101 degrees Celsius on the coolant. Oh, the fan's kicking in, so that's I think that's bringing that down now. So, how are we behaving at 30 miles an hour or less? This seat, I did mention it earlier, my bottom I think is feeling it already. At these slow speeds, aside from the seat, no complaints. Apart from that suspension didn't manage that pothole very well. I'll come back to you on that. Generally though, the suspension has been decent. It's not overly compliant. Yeah, the ride is on the firmer side for certain, bit like the seat, so that combination makes for a pretty sporting ride. For my bottom, it's a bit at odds with the riding position because my legs are not cramped, the seat to peg ratio's good because the seat height feels a bit higher than I would have expected. The clip-ons are pretty close, so I've got no complaints about having to reach forward for the bars. I'm 5'7" by the way, and I got a 32-inch inside leg. This bike's got an up and down Quickshifter, which I think, as I understand it from Luke at Frasers, the up and down bit works in highest throttle map, the SDMS A mode, but on B and C it only works on the upshifts. So I'll see if I can figure that out. Yeah, it does feel like it actually. I'm in B mode there. I went down through the box and it was a bit crunchy. Yeah, it does feel like the downshift is a little bit quicker, less mechanical feeling in A mode. So yeah, does appear to be the case. This bike, I don't know, sounds a bit like a Ducati. I think that was the whole idea behind those 270-degree parallel twins compared to the 180-degree twins of yore. Give a bit more character. That certainly worked. Feels smooth as well, mostly. I do feel a bit through the handlebars, vibration, but I know Suzuki have put some work into the balancing on this engine. So potentially the engine could have been lighter, but it'll vibrate more. You may remember my comments about the seat. Well, a bit embarrassing to admit this, but I was told before I got on the bike, it's actually got the optional comfort seat, this bike, which I'll show you in a bit when we have a little walk around of the bike. On smooth roads, I'm sure this chassis will be a delight to throw around the bends. But look at this. Ooh. Yeah, hard edges on kind of shallow potholes like that. The reaction bit on the hard side. So we do have rear preload, but not much else in terms of adjustment. Yeah, it does seem to me, just going over the speed bumps there, that the front suspension doesn't react very much to them. Or you could put it another way, they do react, and so they don't feel too harsh. The rear shock, in contrast, I can feel every one of those 3 speed humps each time. Right, now it does look a bit like I've crashed the bike in a field. Come a long way off the main road. This particular bike has got the comfort seat and the rear cowl, the seat cowl, kind of replacement seat cover. They're extras, otherwise the bike is bog stock. For the real world, pretty impressive performance, I have to say. If I had the space in my shed, that sort of performance, that sort of fun factor, together with what I think to be decent handling, is pretty tempting proposition. I can at least tell you that the seat height is 810mm or 31.9 inches. So yeah, not exactly a low seat height bike. If you're short in the leg department and you really want one of these, well, try and get to sit on one first, because you might be disappointed. You might have to wear platform soles. 205 kilos wet as well, but in the hand on the road doesn't feel especially heavy. 205 kilos is, maybe a little bit more than I'd like it to be, but once you're riding, doesn't seem to prove a problem in terms of handling. Yeah, coming back over these same speed humps, you can barely feel them through the forks, but through the shock you feel every bump. Maybe that the preload's too high as it stands, but preload, most people will say preload is there to adjust ride height and nothing else. But as I understand it, it also affects the point at which the suspension basically starts working. I wouldn't necessarily want to drop the ride height, but I do want somehow to have the softer rear end. Now that's not to say you should give up on the bike, but it might mean that to get the best out of the bike, might need to invest a bit on the suspension side. Well, I gotta say I'm surprised again. I've got both feet flat on the ground here. I feel a bit guilty about knocking the bike for its seat height now earlier on, or commenting negatively a little bit. There's nothing wrong with it. Feet flat on the ground. Shortest rejoice. So yeah, the mid-range, epic on this bike. Once you get past about 8,000 RPM, you're not getting much more in terms of acceleration. There is no top end kick, but it's a parallel twin. It's very rare you get a top end rush of any measure on a twin cylinder bike. That's okay. On the British roads, you just use that mid-range. Just power through using that, and you'd have a great time on this bike. I don't know if Suzuki has made any efforts to tune the airbox for sound, but if they haven't, they've missed a golden opportunity, because the ZX-4RR I rode earlier on today sounds amazing from the rider's point of view, and probably pretty quiet to passers-by, relatively speaking. But from the cockpit, it sounds like you're on a World Superbike. This bike, from the cockpit, is really quiet. Yeah, and so if they'd make this airbox or the induction really groan when you open the throttle, which you do a lot of on this bike, make it pull. If you just open the throttle and went, it would add a lot to the character of the bike. Now what you have got on this bike is a nice characteristic because of the way the engine works. And there's nothing to be scared of at the top end of the revs. You have got a kind of a facility or a function called over-rev. So if you have come out of a corner using all the mid-range, and you know you'll probably have to slow down again in a bit, you can just keep it in the gear you left that corner in, and you can rev all the way up to the top without any undue surprises. You can hold on to higher revs. So it's not something that's designed in, it's just a nature of the fact that you have this big mid-range which kind of tails off towards the top. And I've got to tell you, in the bends, this bike doesn't sink at all. It doesn't react to the G-forces of being thrown into a bend in the slightest. Yeah, it just bats off high-speed bends. What a sports bike. I get it now. There's me complaining about the seat. I think if you ride this bike properly, you won't be spending much time in the seat. If you go sporty riding in the back roads or in the canyons often, and they're not big enough to make this bike, you know, kind of feel underpowered. Yes, it is firm in suspension and seat, but when you're going fast, that's what you need. I will say it is a touch noisy at speed. Not much wind pressure on my shoulders, but a fair bit of noise knocking about around the crash helmet. Not too much turbulence though, and maybe a different helmet and a different rider would glean different results. Riding this bike today feels a bit like having one of those unexpected sexual liaisons that just come out of nowhere and leave you saying, I won't forget this at the end of it. I've done that. I still remember it, Emma. Uh-oh, crap traffic. Which means I think I'm going to have to sum this bike up. Well, I kind of just did. It's leaving an impression on me, this bike. I haven't ridden many bikes this year, but as I probably already mentioned, today I've ridden a ZX-10R and a ZX-4RR, and this has left just as much an impression on me as those two bikes. I hope more people get to test ride it. I hope this video helps. Don't write it off just because it's a Suzuki middleweight. If you're in the market for something from, I don't know, a 450 all the way up to maybe a 900cc bike, some sort of middleweight area bike that's a bit sporty, give this one a go. Get a test ride, because you might be as surprised as I am. The clutch here, if I was to say 10 out of 10 is maximum effort to pull the clutch and not very pleasant, and 1 out of 10 is hardly any effort at all to pull the clutch and very pleasant, I would probably say this is 5 out of 10. Sorry, a bit of a cop out, but it's okay. It's not very light, but it's not very heavy. Mirrors have been good, by the way. Talking about controls, no complaints about the mirrors. Is it me or mirrors seem to be getting better nowadays? I don't know. But all three bikes today that I've ridden have had decent mirrors. Not amazing, just decent. I can even tell you that I'm not getting hit by too much heat coming off this bike, because I've been at a standstill pretty much for a while, and it's probably about 20 Celsius out here at the moment, and I'm not really feeling much heat coming up off the bike, even though the fan's kicking in and out quite a lot. Right, let's get back to Frasers. Most kind of them to let me out on one of their bikes again. So I'll see you down in the comments, folks. Take care of yourselves until the next video. Ta-da!